appreciate you joining us today, because today we're going to do a little bit of a tough subject. We're going to talk about truth, the ugly truth around divorce, right? Now, this is not the show you may be thinking of. This is not, we're not going to beat up on people that have been divorced or getting divorced. This is a show about how to handle the real estate asset, because we're a real estate show, how to handle the real estate asset when you're going through a divorce.
Yeah.
Now, most people don't start out that way, right?
They don't start out what way?
Wanting a divorce, getting married to have a divorce.
No, most don't.
No. And yet it's fairly prevalent. In the secular world, it's about 50% of marriages end in divorce. And if it's a second marriage, it's right around 75 to 80% end in a second divorce. That's a scary stat.
That is a scary stat.
Yeah. So we thought, well...
And just talking about stats for a minute, I've always heard, and I always found it really interesting, that people in the church have the same divorce rate.
I heard that too.
And it's not true.
So I Googled it.
Awesome.
I used my friend Google, and you can't believe everything you read on the internet, but it seemed like there were some pretty good stories or stats. That's what I meant to say. Interesting that Catholic couples are 31% less likely to divorce. Now, maybe that's because they annul instead of divorce. I don't know.
Doubt it.
But 31% less. Protestants are 35% less likely to divorce.
And this stat hit me really hard. The next one, which is Jewish, is 97% less likely.
Yeah.
That's huge.
That means they almost don't exist.
Yeah.
Divorce within Jewish marriages. And maybe it's maybe because Jewish is more culture and it's a family thing steeped with tradition and roles for different people and whatever. I don't know. I'd have to do a whole research on that. But that was an interesting stat to come across. So about 50% of all marriages end in divorce. That's not nice.
That's bad stat.
Now, most of the time, when you get married, you start to put down roots, which means generally you buy a house, you start to accumulate some wealth, some assets, and when you divorce, they say divorce is 50-50, right? Half and half. And I think it's not. It's usually 20-20, and the other 60 goes to the lawyers. But
yeah, I'm not sure if it's the lawyers, but there's definitely a lot of costs.
There's a lot of costs, yeah. So today we're going to talk about kind of 6 things to watch out for, or 6 tips for how to sell a property if you're in the unfortunate place where there's just no fixing it. You're going to get a divorce, you're going to divide your assets, and you're probably going to sell the house. So I've got 6 tips for what to do.
And before we get into those 6 tips, do you think we should maybe introduce ourselves?
Well, we could. And I've got experience around, not really experience around divorce, but almost getting divorced. Does that make you experienced at divorce, or
No.
experienced at keeping it together?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll go with
So
that.
I'm experienced at keeping it together, because the first 9 years of my marriage were horrible, according to my wife. I was a little bit ignorantly bliss. I knew we had some issues, but I didn't think we were going on the divorce path. Yeah. She knew we were on the path to divorce.
Well, they say that if you rate your marriage out of 10, let's say a 7, that the woman is usually 2 to 3 points lower than that.
That's typical, yeah.
Typical. And so if you're sitting out there going, yeah, my marriage is a 10, well, it's probably a 7. And if you're thinking, it's a 5, if you're a man, sorry. And, if you're thinking a 5, well, it's time to get to work and look at that marriage.
And what we actually started doing was we were learning communication styles and male-female differences. We learned about how love languages. We learned about love and respect. Took all kinds of courses, because when you actually work on your marriage, they get better. Imagine that, typically.
Typically.
And we did this we'd go on vacation once a year in the wintertime, and we took a book with us, and it was the Marriage Checkup. And it had like 64 questions that you asked, and you ranked it between 1 and 10. And Youre would do the same thing, 1 to 10. We still didn't introduce ourselves, by the way, but most people know who we are, but I'm going to tell them in a minute. And then we looked at that year after year and see if our marriage was getting better. And what was interesting, even when we got to an 8 or a 9, which we thought, oh, that's fantastic. In a couple years with growth, that 8 or 9 was now our new 7.
Yep.
And the 8 or 9 was way better in a few years. But you never really hit 10, because 10 says there's no room for improvement. And in my house, that's the biggest room.
Yeah.
Yeah, the room for improvement.
I like that.
Yeah. So you're Ryan Decker.
I'm Ryan.
I'm Ken Decker. You're my son.
You're my dad.
Some people think you're my brother because they hear us on the radio or on the telephone. They go, you guys sound just alike. Or many of them say that you sound like me.
Yeah.
And others say that I sound like you. And I said, well, I can't sound like him because I came first. So he has to sound like me.
Unless they met me first.
Okay, I guess so.
There you go.
There you go. That's a different perspective. It's all about perspective.
It sure is.
So today we're talking about the perspective of getting a divorce and what to do with your real estate assets. So number one, if you've got children and there's smaller children that are staying with one of you or split custody or whatever, if one person can keep the house, the home, the one that the kids are growing up in, that's the best. Don't sell it at all.
It'll add a little stability.
Yeah. Stability and normality for those children. Because when the children are what would I say? They're again, typically they're the ones that take the brunt of a divorce.
Emotionally, because they're raw and they're fresh
little.
and they're little. Yeah.
They think they caused it sometimes.
Yeah.
And they don't fully understand why mom and dad aren't going to live together anymore. And if they can have the normality of having the house that they've always gone home to, because it's super stressful, a divorce for the parents, it's super stressful for the kids, but then add a move on top of that, it's a lot more stress. So if one of you can keep the house and buy the other one out, there's 2 reasons that's good. One is for the children. The other is you save all those expenses. You don't pay off your mortgage. You don't pay a realtor.
When you say pay off your mortgage, you mean when you do close your mortgage,
discharge it.
You're going to have to pay fees for that.
Yeah, for discharging.
Yeah, right.
That's what I meant. Pay it off early.
Yes.
Because you sell your property. All of those things, you can save those fees. Now it's important to know, like some people will say, I've had people come to me and go, we're looking at getting a divorce. One of us would like to stay in. Can you give us a value on the property? And if it's amicable, that's a hard word to say. How do you say that word?
I'm not trying it.
If it's amicable, then we can come in and give you a value on the house. If it's going to go to court or in the lawyer process, then you're going to need a formal appraisal.
And I would actually get 1 or 2, maybe even 3 appraisals. I know that sounds high, but then there's no room for feeling like, hey, this isn't fair. No, you got 3. It's not, her appraiser, his appraiser. It's we got 3 appraisers, and they're all saying the same thing.
Yeah. Or 2, and then if there's too big a difference, get a 3rd.
Yeah. Yep.
And then, so you settle on a price, and then make sure, it's not 50-50. It's now okay. Because if we sold the property, we would have had to pay all these fees.
Yeah.
So when you go to buy out, you take the fees and everything off.
At least half of them.
At least half, and then buy out the difference.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? Yeah. So the number 2 is hire a professional realtor. There's a huge stress in divorcing.
Yeah.
And
do you make great decisions when you're stressed?
No.
Generally not.
No, you make emotional decisions, which are not generally good. So a professional realtor is going to say subjective, or objective, sorry. Objective.
Yep.
because they're not subject to the stresses of your divorce and the emotions of maybe there's fighting or whatever. And selling yourself adds a lot of stress.
Yes.
It's difficult in the best of times. Never mind trying to do it while you're going through that other transition. You may be fighting around keeping the house clean. One person may not be there anymore. They may be there. All kinds of things that it's just good to have a third party to negotiate those things with you.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So then, yeah, it's that neutral party. And so if you're selecting a neutral party, it's important because if one, let's say the male has a friend that's a realtor and it's their friend, then the other spouse is going to feel like could feel that that person's looking after them, or they're only communicating with them, they're not communicating with the other party, and it can create all kinds of stuff. So we like to say either get someone that both of you know and trust, or get someone that neither one of you know
but both trust.
Yeah.
And then what I've seen sometimes too, at least when I was younger, is you would take, let's say, the husband and mom would take the wife, and you'd be able to deal with them.
Yeah, it makes it a little easier when you're a team.
And that's in pretty extreme cases, but you know, that whole element of, you know, trying to keep it cohesive and yet some separation just for...
Like we had personal friends that went through a divorce several years back, and they chose to use Youre and I because we were friends of both of them for a long time. And they said, well, we're going through this. You know we're going through it. Let's have you, because you are already a realtor to start with. So let's use you to sell the house. And subsequently, they've both purchased homes through us independently. So, you know, for a realtor, it's a horrible thing to say, but there's business in divorce.
There is.
And yet it's not fun business. And yet we're professional. We've done many divorce situations, and we're good at communicating and staying objective and handling the process for you so that, you know, there's no shame. There's no guilt. There's no nothing from us. We're business people. We treat it as a business transaction. And that's actually point number 3, is for the people that are getting a divorce, selling a house is a business transaction, right? And it's no longer a home. You've made that decision. You've broken up, or you're breaking up. You've broken up. It's no longer a home. It's a business decision to sell an asset and move on with our lives. And so treat it like that.
Yeah. Or if you're keeping it for the kids to keep their home intact.
Yeah.
And
if there's one thing I've found is in the many people, divorced people that I've met, or people that are going through a divorce, most of them, almost all of them, they want the best for the children. They get it that they're not getting along, but they still want the best out of the situation for the children that's possible.
Yeah.
Most people have a heart for their children. Yeah. So having a plan. This is where a realtor comes in, talking with you. And sometimes we even talk separately. You know, they're not in the same room. They don't want to be in the same room. So we actually communicate with one spouse, and then we communicate with the other spouse, and we kind of act like mediators to come up with a pricing plan. And I think it's really important that you have a pricing plan up front. Know where the money's going. Know what you want to price it at. Know when you want to make price reductions if it's not selling. Because sometimes one spouse is in the house and they're liking it. And the other spouse is paying for it. And they don't want it to sell quickly. So they maybe keep it messy, or they don't allow showings or whatever. So it can be a stressful time for the realtor too. And we negotiate or navigate all of that stuff, and then have a plan that the price is going to adjust at regular intervals. And make it ahead of time that's a percentage, right? What would be a good percentage?
Well, it depends on the price of the home. So, like, if it's only $100,000 property out in the sticks, 1% isn't nearly big enough. Right. So I would generally, the minimum I want to reduce a home is 5 to 10 grand. Anything less doesn't have any impact.
Okay. So I like to say, have a percentage, whether it's 3 or 5 or 7 or whatever. Yep. Probably 5 is a pretty good number. Because even if it's 100,000, 5 is 5,000. Mm-hmm. If it's 400,000, that's a $20,000 drop. Mm-hmm. That's a significant drop.
Well, if it's $1 million property.
Yeah, it's $50,000, which is pretty typical in that price range. So, if you have a plan that at 30 days or 45 days, we're going to reduce the price by 5%. And then if it still doesn't sell in another 45 days, we're going to reduce another 5%. And then also prearrange what your bottom line is. If your bottom line is a percentage of the asking price. So that sets you up for not having disagreements around, do we accept this offer or not? Yeah. If it's said, we'll accept anything, say, within 3% of asking price, well, now you've got that predetermined, and when it comes to offer time, which can be a little bit stressful, you know that if you can get it within 3%, you've both already agreed you're going to accept it. And then that number works well because as your percentage drop, then your 3% just stays there, right, as your price goes down. So that kind of thing can make a huge difference. Yeah. And number 5 is a tough one. Number 5. Yeah.
And this has so much impact. It's massive. I've seen homes sell for hundreds of thousands less than they should have because of this point.
Really?
Yeah.
So what caused them to sell so less?
It has to do with the happiness in the home. Or
it's almost an energy. You can feel it. The spirit of the people in the home affect the property and others walking in.
Well, and then also there's sometimes clues, like a smashed door or, half a closet filled and the other half empty. There's things that people pick up on subconsciously, and it just starts to wear them down as they're going through the home.
Marks in the carpet where furniture used to be because the house has been divided.
Yep.
It just, so there's ways of fixing that. Bring in a little extra furniture. You can ask one of whoever's leaving the house, the spouse, to leave their off-season clothes in the closet and pick it up once the house sells, or borrow a friend's off-season clothes. Whatever, just to make it look like a healthy home.
And feel like a healthy home.
Yeah, put some fresh flowers in.
Turn on the lights, open the blinds. Because often when people are going through a divorce, they tend to close in and, turn things off, close the blinds, make it dark. And so be very proactive with making it a bright, happy home. And because we're on a Christian radio station, I can say this. Often when I go and list a home or I'm in a home that's a divorce, I often pray over it and just ask for, good energy to be brought in and that God's presence would be here. And if there's anything negative, it would be removed. And I've noticed over the years that there is an impact in praying over a home. So if you're going through a divorce or if you know someone who is, go pray.
Excuse me. And, another thing I just thought of was let your realtor know.
Yeah.
They feel the energy. A lot of times people try, okay, we're going to put on a happy face. We're going to say we're selling our house. We're not going to tell our realtor why we're selling, that it's actually a divorce. Generally, we feel it. And yet, we can't guide effectively if we don't know the truth.
Yeah.
And so, if you're open with us, that doesn't mean, I think people think they're going to get less for their house because they tell their realtor that they're getting divorced.
But if anything, we can get you more for your house if you tell us. If you don't tell us, then we're not necessarily covering for where we need to.
And there's times where it's, I just recently working with a lady, lovely lady, and it's court-ordered, the sale of the house, because it got that far down the line. And I've done a number of them that are court-ordered so that, one spouse signs and the other one has to go through the lawyers, and they're forced to sign the sale, and is really not happy. And yet this person had such a great attitude, and they said, it's a business. It's just business. I said, oh, that's really tough, and that it's going through the court and whatever. She goes, nope, it's just business right now. So she's finished with the sadness of the breakup of the family, and now it's just business to clean up the assets and divide and move on.
And I mean, one of the mistakes people can make is hanging on to the house. I don't know if it's subconscious, trying to keep things together, but hanging on to it can cause you not to be able to move on, or cause the value to go on down because it's been on the market for 2 years. There's all sorts of things that can draw it down. So once you've decided, it's best if you move forward with full force.
All right, and then understanding what it'll cost and what you're going to do with the money. It's what it costs to sell a property. You both have moving costs. You're going to have the cost of the legal fees for the actual sale of the property. Those are generally minor in comparison to the separation costs and the divorce costs. Understanding where the money will go. So if there's net equity in the house and you got $50,000 or $100,000, $200,000 in there, where's the money go? Does it just go $100,000, or do we divide it and we pay off bills that we use to buy furniture for the house, or to maintain the house, or repair the house, or upgrade the house? Let's pay all those bills off, and then we're going to divide the money.
Or maybe someone wants a cottage and it's not worth as much as the house, and so you keep $150 and they get $50 and the cottage. There's all sorts of elements.
Yeah, and I think having those things set out in advance before you actually sell is huge. It's huge.
It takes a lot of that stress and guessing away.
The other thing to bear in mind is that if you're going to go buy a house, you have to have your settlement signed for the most part. And sometimes people will sell a house because of the divorce. They're in a separation mode or whatever. They divide the asset. Then they both want to go buy a house, but they may not qualify because the separation agreement isn't agreed to and signed yet. So you can't get a mortgage because they don't want to approve you, because they don't know, whether you're going to have to pay support, child support, or alimony, or whatever, spousal support. And I've seen it go both ways now, where the female spouse is making way more money than the male spouse, and they have to pay support. And so it's interesting, but get that done before you sell is the best. And usually that's the hardest thing for people to sign, because there's disagreements on custody of children, or on how they're going to split up the assets.
And there's sometimes really interesting things in them, like you can only live 15 minutes drive from my house, or so the settlements aren't always just about money.
You can't live within 15
or you
minutes
can't.
of my house.
Well, the one I'm thinking of is you had to.
Okay.
And so when I was helping this individual buy, we had to map around the house and say, okay, where can you buy?
And that was for children, for support of the children,
Right.
so the children could go to the same school, and ease of custody and all that kind of thing.
And that the parents would still have the kids would have both parents in their lives.
Nice. I've even heard of some people go out and they buy a second property, you got to be still pretty flexible and positive about your spouse, even though you're divorcing. Mature, I would even say, is they'll rent an apartment or a condo, or they buy a condo or something, and the kids and the one spouse stay in the house 1 week, and then that spouse goes to the condo and the other spouse moves back into the house for 1 week. So the kids aren't being shuttled back and forth. The parents do the shuttling back and forth, and that's very stabilizing compared to the other. So that was pretty neat.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I wonder how that would play out over time, like after a year or two.
You just see the problem possibilities, right? It's, you didn't leave the condo clean, or you didn't leave the house clean, or whatever. It could be a nightmare.
Such and such in your house. What are you doing?
Yeah, there's all kinds of things, and So we would just want to support you in this. If this is one of the things you're going through, we want to make sure that, you understand that the Decker team has experience working with people that are going through a divorce, and that need special care and special instruction on how to get,
and special support.
Yeah. Special care.
Yeah.
That's support.
And support.
Okay. You can say and support. And the best thing of all is the best thing is to stop it before.
Right. And so I'm going to throw this plug. If you're in a phase where, this may be an option for you, or maybe your marriage is strong, but you're having a lot of fighting, we have tons of resources that we've used for our own marriages, as well as helped many other people with theirs. And so if you need those resources, please reach out. We want to set you up with those.
Or we can connect you with people that can...
that do this full time.
Can help, can help a lot. Yeah, so a little bit heavy show today.
Very heavy.
Let's end it on a high.
Okay.
I've had cases where people have come and said, we're going to sell because we're getting divorced. And one of the questions I said, well, would you not do it? If you could put the marriage together, would you not sell your house? And they've said yes. And we've worked at that. We've sat down with them. We've counseled with them. I don't like the word counseled. We kind of just shared our journey.
We've peered with them.
Peered with them. I like that word. Yeah, and so we share where we've been. They see hope in where we've come, through Christ and through our journey of learning how to be a better husband, how to be a better wife, and how to communicate with one another, how to fight fair, how to have rules and boundaries that both agree on. And, it just...
How to get closure, how
to
move forward.
We'd love to see a marriage restored rather than, make a few $1,000s on the sale of a house because of a divorce. That's really not where our heart is. And if, for whatever reason, whether it be abuse or whatever, you've said, no, this just cannot continue. It cannot, the marriage is over. It's done. Well, then we'd like to be your realtor because we're experienced in helping those that are going through that transition. And we can help you both on the buy and the sell side.
Absolutely.
And get a fresh start. And, that's what life's about, is fresh starts with, that's what Jesus was about. He said, okay, you be baptized and born again.
So actually, we don't have much time, but I have this story from a few weeks ago. I was working with a client, and she was going through a separation, and we got the agreement accepted on the other side, and then it was conditional, and the day before the conditions were met, she said, Ryan, I hate to do this to you, but I think I'm going to stick with him.
Nice.
So we tore everything up, and the marriage is still going. And so, I'm praying for her and hoping that they can keep this together. And, that stuff happens, and that's okay too. That's fantastic when that happens.
Great story. Yeah. Awesome. Well, this has been an interesting, wonderful time we've spent with you. Thanks for joining us on the journey.